I never thought a simple roommate arrangement would turn into one of the most confusing, but honestly eye-opening chapters of my life. When Jake moved in, he dropped the "I'm curious" bomb like it was no big deal, and I thought, okay, cool, whatever that means. I was just expecting some awkward roommate dynamics or late-night debates over dirty dishes, not whatever this turned into. So yeah, I'm Max. I'm 25, living in a tiny apartment in Brooklyn, working a regular 9 to 5 at a marketing firm, and honestly, the last thing I wanted was drama. When my old roommate bailed last minute, Jake answered my Craigslist ad with a message that was oddly chill and straightforward. He was a graphic designer, about my age, and seemed pretty laid back. We met up, had a beer, did the walkthrough, and it felt normal, like any casual roommate setup. But then one night, a week or so in, Jake and I were sitting on the couch watching some dumb reality show, and out of nowhere he says, "Hey Max, can I be honest? I'm kind of curious about guys." Like he dropped it casually, like it wasn't a big deal, but for me it hit me sideways, because I'd always thought of Jake as just this cool artsy dude who probably dated girls, and I'd never really thought about his close sexuality. I mean, I'm gay, but I never really knew anyone openly curious like that before. I chuckled a bit, trying to play it cool, but inside I was scrambling. I didn't know what to say or how to respond. Did he want advice? Was he looking for something? Was this some kind of joke? I tried not to make it weird, but suddenly the whole vibe in the apartment shifted. That night, I found myself watching him more closely, how he laughed, how his eyes lingered when a certain actor showed up on the screen, how he brushed his hair back nervously when I caught him staring at me. It was like I was seeing him in a different light, but also wondering if I was just imagining things. The thing is, I hadn't planned on this becoming complicated. I was just looking for a roommate to split rent with, not to navigate uncharted territory with someone who was figuring himself out right in front of me. And maybe that's what threw me the most. How quickly just roommates started feeling like something else entirely. Now every time Jake drops a comment or looks at me a certain way, I'm stuck wondering, is this curiosity just a phase, or is it something more? And if it is, what does that mean for us sharing this tiny apartment in the city that never sleeps? I guess I'm about to find out. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and the sound of Jake humming in the kitchen. I was still tangled up in thoughts from the night before, trying to figure out how I was supposed to act around him now. It wasn't like I'd never been around guys who were exploring their close sexuality, but this was different. This was real life, in my apartment with my roommate. Jake caught me staring as I shuffled into the kitchen, looking like I had just wrestled with my pillow all night. He gave me one of those easy smiles that somehow made everything feel less awkward. "Morning, sleepyhead," he said. "Morning," I replied, trying to sound casual even though my heart was racing a little. "Coffee? Always," he said, handing me a mug. Then he sat down across from me like he was gearing up for some serious talk. "About last night, I don't want this to be weird between us. I guess I'm still sorting things out, and you were the first person I felt comfortable enough to say that to, and that's when I realized something important." Jake wasn't trying to force anything. He wasn't expecting me to pick up some manual on how to be a mentor or a boyfriend or whatever. He just needed someone to be genuine with. And honestly, that took a lot of the pressure off. "Hey," I said, meeting his eyes. "It's not weird. I'm glad you told me, and I'm here if you want to talk or have questions or, I don't know, just figure stuff out." He nodded, looking relieved. "Thanks, Max. That means a lot." Over the next few days, things settled into a new rhythm. Jake and I started talking more about his experiences, his confusion, and the things he wanted to try or learn about. I shared bits of my own story, how I came out late, the awkward first dates, the endless nights overthinking texts, and it felt like we were building this quiet bond over shared vulnerabilities. One night, we were both home late, me trying to hammer out a project and Jake sketching on his tablet. The apartment was dim except for the desk lamps, and there was this stillness that felt kind of comforting. Out of nowhere, Jake looked up and asked, "Do you think it's normal to be scared? Like, really scared?" I paused, then said, "Yeah, I think it's normal to be scared of anything that could change how you see yourself or how others see you. But sometimes that fear is just the start of something good." He smiled softly, then put down his tablet. I think I'm ready to try. Like, actually try dating guys. That was a big moment, even if it was just a quiet conversation in our cramped living room. It felt like a step forward, not just for Jake, but for both of us. I could sense that he was nervous, but also hopeful, and that made me want to support him even more. A few days later, Jake asked if I wanted to go to a gay bar with him. I was surprised, but also excited. "You sure?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, grinning. "I need a wingman." So we went. The place was loud and packed, a mix of flashing lights and pulsing music. Jake stuck close to me at first, but gradually he started opening up, chatting with people, laughing, even dancing a little. I watched him and thought, man, this is exactly where he should be. At one point, this guy came over and started chatting with Jake. I noticed Jake glancing at me, maybe looking for some kind of permission or reassurance. I just gave him a thumbs up, and then I stepped back to give them space. Later, Jake came over with a big smile and said, "That was fun. Thanks for being there." "No problem," I said. "You did great." But beneath all the excitement, I couldn't shake this quiet feeling that things between us were shifting. I caught myself wondering if Jake's curiosity was going to bring us closer in ways I hadn't expected, or if it was going to complicate everything. And then, one night, as we were winding down after a movie, Jake turned to me and said, "Max, can I ask you something kinda personal?" "Shoot. Have you ever thought about us? Like, not just as roommates, but maybe something more?" My heart skipped. I wasn't sure if I was imagining it, but I thought I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. I swallowed hard, because yeah, I had thought about it. More than I probably should have. But hearing him say it out loud made it real in a way I wasn't totally ready for. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I guess I have." But I didn't want to mess up what we've got. Jake nodded slowly, like he understood exactly what I meant. "Yeah, me too." And just like that, the line between curiosity and something more blurred, leaving me stuck in this in-between place where anything could happen and where I wanted it to. But I also had no idea how to get there without breaking everything. So here I am, caught between the guy who moved in just to split rent and the guy who might be the person I've been waiting for without even realizing it. And honestly, I don't know what's next. But I'm ready to find out. After that night, things between Jake and me settled into this weird, delicate balance. We hadn't put a label on whatever was happening, but there was definitely a shift. Like the air in the apartment was charged with something unspoken. It wasn't awkward exactly, more like we were both waiting to see who'd make the first move. I kept replaying his question in my head. "Have you ever thought about us? Like, not just as roommates, but maybe something more?" I mean, I had thought about it, obviously. But hearing it out loud, hearing it from him, made it real in a way that was equal parts thrilling and terrifying. A few days later, I was sitting at my desk, grinding through some work emails, when Jake popped his head around the corner. "Hey, you taking a break anytime soon?" I looked up, trying not to sound too eager. "Yeah, I guess I could." "Why?" He shrugged, that easy smile on his face. "I thought maybe we could grab some dinner. Just us." I felt my chest tighten. Was this a date? Was this him trying to test the waters? I nodded. "Sure, that sounds good." We ended up at this little taco spot not far from the apartment. Nothing fancy, just casual vibes, neon signs, and cheap margaritas. We joked about everything. The ridiculousness of the bar we'd been to, the weird guy who tried to hit on both of us at once, the fact that Jake still hadn't figured out how to cook anything beyond instant noodles. It was comfortable, like old friends catching up, but every glance between us held a little more weight. At one point, Jake reached over the table and brushed a crumb off my shirt. His fingers lingered, just a second too long. I caught his eye, and instead of pulling back like maybe I expected, he smiled shyly. "Max," he said softly, "I'm really glad you're here." "Me too," I replied honestly, feeling like my voice had dropped a few octaves. After dinner, we walked back to the apartment under the glow of street lamps and the hum of the city. The usual noise of Brooklyn felt distant, like we were in our own little bubble. When we got to the door, Jake hesitated, like he wasn't sure if he should say something or just go inside. I took a breath and decided to break the silence. "Jake, about what you said the other night, I've been thinking. I don't want to mess up what we have, but I'm also pretty sure I want more. If you want that too." His eyes lit up and he laughed nervously. "I want that. I'm just scared of screwing it up. I've never done this before." "Me neither," I admitted. "But maybe that's the point. We figure it out together." He smiled wider, then suddenly leaned in and kissed me. It was soft, a little unsure, but electric. Like the first time you touch something and realize it's exactly what you didn't know you needed. From that night on, everything changed. We started officially dating, though we kept it low-key. I think we were both adjusting, learning how to be more than just roommates sharing a space. We had our clumsy moments, like when Jake tried to cook dinner and nearly set off the smoke alarm, or when I accidentally called him roommate instead of boyfriend during a Netflix binge. But the best part was how natural it felt. Like, I never would have guessed that the guy who answered my Craigslist ad would turn out to be the person I wanted to wake up next to every morning. One evening, a few weeks into us dating, Jake surprised me with tickets to this art exhibit downtown. It was all abstract stuff. Bright colors, crazy shapes, totally his vibe. We wandered through the gallery, talking about which pieces spoke to us, and I caught Jake stealing glances at me between exhibits. At one point, he took my hand and I squeezed it back. It was simple, but it meant everything. Later, as we were walking back home, Jake stopped me. "Max, I want you to know something. I'm really glad I told you I was curious. I was so scared it would change things or make you want to leave." "Hey, I'm not going anywhere," I said, pulling him close. "We're in this together." He rested his forehead against mine and sighed. "I'm still figuring things out, but having you here makes it less scary." That's when I realized that this whole thing, curiosity, fear, first kisses, late night talks, it wasn't just about Jake discovering himself. It was about us building something real, piece by piece. But of course, nothing is ever that simple. A couple of weeks later, Jake got an unexpected call from a big design agency in Manhattan. A dream offer, but it meant more hours, a longer commute, and maybe less time for us. When he told me, I saw the excitement mixed with hesitation in his eyes. "I don't want this to mess us up," he said quietly. I shook my head. "We'll figure it out. We always do." Still, I couldn't help but worry. How do you keep building something fragile when life keeps throwing curveballs? Was I ready to handle that? Was Jake? That night, as we sat on the couch, the city lights flickering outside, I took his hand in mine and said, "No matter what happens, I want you to know I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." He smiled that shy smile again, like he was still amazed someone like me would stick around. And maybe that's what this is all about. Two people, uncertain and curious, deciding to lean into the unknown. Together. I don't know where this road will lead, but for the first time in a long time, I'm excited to find out. The following week, Jake started his new job at the agency, and suddenly our apartment felt smaller, quieter. His hours stretched longer, and the easy rhythm we had was replaced by this kind of exhausted silence every night. I'd get home from work and find him curled up on the couch, half asleep, his laptop forgotten on the coffee table. I didn't want to be that guy who's all, "Are we okay?" every time he looked tired, so I tried to give him space. But truth be told, I missed the way things used to be. The late night talks, the small touches, the way his laughter used to fill the room. One Thursday, after a particularly long day at work for both of us, I caught Jake sitting at the kitchen counter, staring at his untouched dinner. The usual spark was gone from his eyes. "Hey," I said, sliding onto the stool beside him. "You okay?" he sighed, raking a hand through his hair. "I don't know. It's like I wanted this job so badly, but now that I have it, I'm just tired, and I feel like I'm letting you down." I shook my head quickly. "Jake, you're not letting me down. If anything, I'm proud of you for going after what you want. But I get that it's hard." He looked at me, vulnerability plain on his face. I just don't want to lose us." That hit me harder than I expected. "You won't. We just have to figure out how this works together." That night we stayed up late, talking about what we both needed. More time, more effort, more honesty. It wasn't easy, but it felt necessary. We promised to check in more, to not let things slide into silence. Slowly, we found new ways to connect, like leaving little notes for each other on the fridge, or scheduling date nights, even if it meant just ordering takeout and watching some dumb comedy. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. One Saturday, after a lazy brunch in bed, Jake surprised me by pulling out this old photo album. "I never really showed you this," he said, flipping through pages of his childhood and teenage years. I sat beside him, watching as a shy kid transformed into the guy the first was falling for. He paused on a picture of himself and a guy from high school, both smiling awkwardly. I never told my family I was even curious back then. I thought I'd just figure it out on my own. I nodded, feeling a mix of sadness and hope. It's scary, not knowing who'll accept you or how it'll change things. Jake looked at me seriously. "But having you here made all the difference. You made me feel safe enough to try." I squeezed his hand. "I'm glad I'm the one." Weeks passed, and the more we opened up, the more I realized how much I loved this guy, not just for who he was, but for the journey we were on together. Then, just when I thought we found our footing, life threw another curveball. Jake's ex from college showed up, out of nowhere. It was a random Tuesday evening when Jake's phone buzzed with a message. He hesitated before showing me, "Hey Jake, I'm in town and would love to catch up if you're free. It's been a while." I could see the conflict in Jake's eyes. He told me they had a complicated history. It wasn't anything serious after college, but they shared a lot of memories. He wanted to meet up just to get closure. I wanted to be supportive, but I also felt this knot in my stomach. Jealousy? Insecurity? Probably both. The night of the meetup, Jake was restless. He kept checking his phone, pacing around the apartment. "I'm just worried," I finally admitted. "Not about you, but about what this means for us. I don't want to lose what we're building." He stopped and looked at me, eyes soft. "Max, you're the one I want. That's not going to change just because someone from my past shows up." We talked for hours that night, hashing through fears and boundaries. I told him I trusted him, but I needed reassurance. He promised to be open with me. When Jake got back from the coffee meet, he looked relieved, but also a little drained. It was good. We cleared the air. It felt like closing a chapter. I pulled him into a hug. "Thanks for being honest." It was another reminder that this was not going to be easy. But it was real. Messy, complicated, but real. Sometimes I wonder if I was naive to think that a Craigslist ad would lead me here, to late-night confessions, vulnerability, and love I never saw coming. But then I look at Jake, tired but smiling, and I'm convinced it's worth every twist. We still have our bad days. Days when the apartment feels too small, or the silence too loud. But we're learning how to hold on to each other, to the messy, beautiful thing this is becoming. And honestly, I wouldn't trade this for anything. A few weeks after Jake met up with his ex, things felt like they were stabilizing again. That whole situation had shaken me more than I cared to admit, but it also pushed us to communicate better, which was something we both needed. Still, the underlying tension from my insecurities didn't just vanish overnight. One Friday night, I was on the couch, scrolling through my phone when Jake came home later than usual. He looked exhausted, like the kind of tired where you're not just physically drained, but mentally fried too. He dropped his bag by the door and flopped down beside me. "Rough day?" I asked, setting my phone aside. He let out a long breath. "Yeah, the project I'm leading is stressing me out. I don't know how I'm supposed to keep up with everything." I nodded, understanding all too well the pressure he was under. "Want to talk about it?" He shook his head. "Not really. I just want to unwind." I scooted closer, resting my arm along the back of the couch. "How about we do something stupid to take your mind off work? Like, I don't know, binge watch bad horror movies until we're both too scared to sleep?" Jake laughed for the first time that night. "Deal." So that's what we did. We ordered pizza, sat in our pajamas, and made fun of every ridiculous jump scare. It was exactly what we needed, and in those moments, the weight of the outside world faded. But even as we laughed, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jake was holding something back. I could tell when he wasn't his usual goofy self. When I asked if something was wrong, he brushed it off, but I wasn't convinced. The next morning, he left early for work without a word. I decided to give him some space, but also texted him later just to check in. "Hey, I typed. I'm here if you want to talk." Minutes passed before he replied. "Thanks, Max. I appreciate it." That was it. No elaboration. No hint of what was really going on. The next night, I came home from work to find Jake sitting at the kitchen table, head in his hands like he was carrying the weight of the world. I poured us both some wine and sat down across from him. "Talk to me," I said gently. He looked up, eyes glossy. "I don't want to worry you, but I think I might be burning out. I'm not sleeping well, and I can't focus. I'm scared I'm going to mess everything up." Hearing him like that, so vulnerable, made my heart ache. I reached across the table and took his hand. "Hey, you're not alone in this. We'll figure it out together. Maybe we need to slow down for a bit." He nodded slowly, squeezing my hand back. "Yeah, maybe." That night, we stayed up late just talking about fears, about hopes, about how overwhelming life could be. It was one of those rare nights where everything felt raw but honest. Weeks passed, and Jake did start pulling back a bit from work, trying to find some balance. But then another challenge popped up. Our landlord announced that the rent was going up significantly starting next month. I swear, the stress of that news hit us like a punch to the gut. Our tiny Brooklyn apartment was already tight on space and budget, and suddenly we had to figure out how to make it work or find somewhere else. We spent nights scrolling through listings, trying to find a place that didn't cost an arm and a leg but still felt like home. The whole process was exhausting and frustrating, and for a while it felt like the stress was overshadowing everything else. One evening, while we were both sprawled on the floor, surrounded by apartment brochures and takeout containers, Jake looked at me and said, "Maybe we should just move in together." "Like, really together?" "You know, officially." I blinked. "You mean like a couple moving in, not just roommates?" He smiled nervously. "Yeah, I mean, we've been acting like it anyway. Why not just make it official?" I felt my heart flutter. I'd like that. That conversation was a turning point. Instead of letting the rent hike push us apart, it brought us closer. We started seriously looking for a new place together, talking about what we wanted. A bedroom each, a little more space, maybe even a balcony where we could sit with coffee in the mornings. The process was slow and stressful, but it was also exciting. Every apartment we toured was a chance to imagine a future. One night, after a disappointing showing at a place that was way too expensive, we stopped at a quiet bar near the river. Sitting there, Jake reached across the table and took my hand. "No matter what happens with the apartment, I'm glad I have you." I squeezed his hand back. "Me too." Eventually, we found a place that felt right. Small but cozy, with big windows and enough room for both of our stuff, and maybe even a plant or two. Moving day was chaotic as hell. Boxes everywhere, last-minute runs to the hardware store, and way too many trips up and down the stairs. But when we finally flopped on the floor of our empty living room, exhausted and covered in scratches, we looked at each other and laughed. "This is it," I said. "Our place." Jake grinned, pulling me into a hug. "Our place." That night, as we lay tangled up on the floor among boxes and bubble wrap, it hit me just how far we'd come. From awkward roommates sharing a Craigslist ad to this building a life together. I don't know what the future holds. I'm sure there will be more challenges, more moments of doubt. But right now, with Jake beside me, I feel like we can handle whatever comes next. Because curiosity brought us together, but love is what's keeping us here. Settling into the new place was everything, and nothing like I'd imagined. The moment we stepped inside that slightly worn but charming two-bedroom apartment, I felt this rush of excitement mixed with the heavy weight of responsibility. Here we were, officially cohabiting, and it finally felt like a real step forward. No more just roommates or casual dating. This was ours. On the first night, after a chaotic day of unpacking boxes, assembling furniture from online orders that always arrived with missing parts, and arguing over where to hang that one weird abstract print Jake loved, we finally collapsed on the saggy couch. Our knees touched. And for the first time, it wasn't just the physical closeness. It was something deeper. A quiet acknowledgement that whatever else was messy or uncertain, this was a space we were creating together. Jake broke the silence first. I was nervous about moving in together. What if it messes things up? I laughed softly. Yeah, I had the same thought. But I think it's worth the risk. He nodded, eyes softening. I feel like we're starting a new chapter. That night, as we lay side by side on the unmade bed, surrounded by open boxes and scattered clothes, I caught myself marveling at how unexpected this all was. Just months ago, Jake was my laid-back roommate who casually mentioned he was curious about guys. Now he was my boyfriend, my partner in this small but significant adventure. But as the weeks passed, the honeymoon phase faded a bit. Living together brought up things I hadn't anticipated. Little habits that got on my nerves, moments when we both felt exhausted from juggling work and trying to maintain a relationship. One evening, I found myself frustrated because Jake had left dishes piled in the sink again, and he was annoyed because I'd forgotten to take out the trash. We ended up snapping at each other, voices raised just enough to feel uncomfortable, but not quite to explode. After a few tense minutes, we both sat back, breathing heavy. "I'm sorry," Jake said first. "I didn't mean to get snappy." "Me too," I replied. "I guess we're just both stressed." He reached across the coffee table, taking my hand. "We'll figure this out." We always do. That moment reminded me that love isn't just about the good times. It's about navigating the mundane and the messy too. One weekend, we tried to shake off the tension by taking a day trip to the beach. It was cold and windy, but neither of us cared. We walked along the shore, feet sinking into the wet sand, the ocean's chill biting at our skin. Jake grabbed my hand, and we didn't let go. At one point, we sat on a bench overlooking the water. Jake rested his head on my shoulder and said, "I never thought I'd be this happy." "Me neither," I admitted, "especially with someone I wasn't even sure was ready." He smiled. "Guess curiosity can lead to some pretty great things." Back in the city, work continued to be a balancing act. Jake's job was demanding, and my marketing role had its own chaotic moments. We tried to support each other, but sometimes the exhaustion seeped into our relationship. Still, we made an effort. Cooking together on weekends, spontaneous midnight walks, sending each other silly texts during the day. But then, about 2 months into living together, something unexpected happened. I got a promotion. It wasn't anything huge, just a step up that meant more responsibility and a slight raise, but it felt like validation. When I told Jake, his face lit up with genuine happiness. "That's amazing, Max. You deserve it," he said, pulling me into a hug. But as the excitement faded, I noticed the subtle tension in his eyes. Over the next few days, Jake seemed quieter, more distant. One night, I finally asked him what was going on. "It's nothing," he said, brushing it off. But I knew better. One evening, after a long day at work, I sat him down. "Jake, something's bothering you. Talk to me." He sighed heavily. "It's just, with your promotion and the extra hours you'll have, I'm worried we'll drift apart. That you won't have time for me anymore." I shook my head firmly. "Jake, that won't happen. We're in this together. I might be busy, but that doesn't mean I care any less." He looked relieved, but still uncertain. That conversation made me realize how fragile this was, how much we both needed reassurance and commitment beyond the words. A few days later, I surprised Jake with a weekend getaway. We booked a cozy cabin upstate, away from the city's noise and pressures. No phones, no work, just us. The weekend was perfect. We cooked meals together, sat by the fire, talked for hours about everything and nothing. It was like we hit the reset button. On the last night, under a blanket of stars, Jake turned to me. "Max, I want you to know that I'm all in. I'm done being curious and scared. I want to be with you fully." My heart swelled. I feel the same. We leaned into each other, the silence between us filled with a promise. Back in the city, life would still be complicated, but that weekend reminded us why it was worth fighting for. As I sit here now, thinking about how far we've come, I realized that sometimes the best relationships aren't the ones without questions or doubts. They're the ones where two people decide to be vulnerable, to lean into uncertainty, and to build something real, one imperfect day at a time. And with Jake, I'm ready for whatever comes next. The months after that weekend upstate felt different, lighter somehow. We both carried the memory of those quiet nights by the fire like a shield against the chaos of daily life. I think it reminded us that no matter how busy or tangled things got, we had something solid to come back to. One evening, maybe 3 months later, Jake and I were sitting on our balcony, the city's hum fading into the background as the sun dipped below the skyline. The air was crisp, and we had 2 mugs of tea between us, warming our hands. Jake reached over and laced his fingers with mine. "You know," he said softly, "I don't think I ever stopped being curious. But now, the curiosity isn't about what I'm missing or who I might be. It's about us and what we can build together." I smiled, squeezing his hand. "That's the best kind of curiosity." We sat there for a while, just enjoying the quiet. It felt like a milestone, not because of anything grand or dramatic, but because it was real. Because we'd grown from 2 uncertain guys, sharing a Craigslist ad, into partners who trusted each other enough to be messy, scared, and hopeful all at once. I thought about how far Jake had come, how far I'd come too. From casual roommates to something neither of us had quite expected, but both desperately wanted. And in that moment, I realized that love, in all its imperfect, beautiful forms, was exactly what I needed. The next day, on a whim, I pulled out a small box I'd been hiding. Inside was a simple ring. Nothing flashy, just a quiet symbol of commitment. When Jake saw it, his eyes widened, surprise turning into a soft smile. "No pressure," I said quickly, "but I want you to know I'm serious about us. I want to keep exploring this. Whatever. This turns out to be with you." Jake took a deep breath, then slipped the ring onto his finger. "I'm in, Max. All in." That was it. No big declarations. No dramatic speeches. Just 2 guys, a tiny apartment, and a promise. Looking back, I never would have guessed that a roommate saying, "I'm curious," would lead us here. But I'm grateful it did, because what started as uncertainty became the most certain thing in my life. Sometimes, love shows up in unexpected ways. Sometimes, it's messy and slow and a little scary. But when it's real, it's worth every step. And as I sit here now, holding Jake's hand, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.